So welcome to this episode of the Campus Comics Cast. Note the emphasis on the word "the" because that is apparently how we are differentiating sequels now in the DC universe.
That's right.
So I am the Scott Reed, and I am joined by
The Mike Atchison.
And the Shad Schubert.
Well, there we go. So we have several topics that we want to cover in this episode of the Campus Comics Cast. So first being, well, not first, but I'll mention first, the Suicide Squad. We're also going to talk about BRZRKR #1, Immortal Hulk Volume 6, and the first episode of What If. So before we dive in, anybody got anything they want to talk about real quick?
I don't think so.
I do have one thing I want to mention. So I went and saw, what did I see? Oh, I went and saw Jungle Cruise. So I don't want to talk about Jungle Cruise, but the reason why I mentioned this because I saw the preview again for Shang-Chi, but also saw a preview for the Eternals. I thought I had seen an Eternals preview yet.
Right.
I don't actively seek out the trailers for those. So all thing I have to say is, boy, the effects from the trailer and the costuming looks a whole heck of a lot like Inhumans, which has me very, very nervous about this movie. So yeah. Anyway, so hopefully other people have a more positive view of the trailers than I do. But have you seen those trailers yet?
Not everything can be a home run, Scott.
I know. So, which I guess we'll talk a little bit about in this episode, right?
But I did think of something. It's just the one constant in my TV watching life right now, which is pretty minimal, is watching Sweet Tooth. And I know we talked about the first episode a couple episodes ago, and I have to say it's getting better as it goes. I don't know if you guys are continuing on or not.
I finished the first season, and I liked it quite a bit. So though the music, they had that of Monsters and Men song in the first. The music never got quite back to that draw me in level. But it's overall it's really, really good. Much more positive than the comic book, as far as but I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the second season of that. So
all right, good.
I think I'm episode 7 or 8, so I'm real close to the end. I've been stretching it out, kind of letting it live a little bit more.
That's where I'm. I think we're on 7. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so What If previewed last Wednesday as we record this. So today is the 19th. So that would have been August 11th, if I can do dates correctly.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't watched the second episode yet.
No.
So yeah, it's been a little hectic. So, but the first episode we had, Captain Carter, I guess is as we refer. I don't know what the actual official name of the episode was. I've got that pulled up.
It was What If Captain Carter were the first Avenger?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Thank you for that. So we get a little bit of, as the What If title did in Marvel, we have these alternate storylines. So one little change in this particular episode. And I wonder if that's going to be an emphasis of these episodes. It's going to be like one little change. Sometimes it's pretty dramatic. And I guess if I would have watched the second episode, I maybe would know the answer to this already. But I guess, Shad, what was your first impression of the first episode of What If?
My first impression, I liked the animation style, but I don't know if it lends to rewatching as much. I wasn't overly crazy about the animation style. That was the one thing that kind of got me, is it felt like it's so close to almost a movie or to real actors, real life animation, but still so much animation that I just I don't know if it'll be something I'll go back and go, ooh, I'll watch that again. But I overall I liked the story. I thought that they fit it in pretty well. I do like the Watcher's kind of he's the storyteller that's like, what happens in this if this one little piece is altered. I like that role that's in there, and I hope that it is something where every episode is, here's that point where in hers it was she decided to stay on the floor instead of going into the room. I really liked that kind of, this is where everything changed on it.
Okay. Mike, what about you? What was your first impression of the episode?
It was very positive. I just watched it this morning, and it's nice to have it's such a relief to watch something that's only 30 minutes long, that you don't have to feel too invested in it. You can
Hmm.
fit it in before work or after work or at lunch if you wanted. And this was just that. And I'm not a big animation watcher, but this is the kind of thing that I think will make me be that way. Like Shad said, it's a good little story. I liked the fact that one little turn of fate changes the direction of everything. I think we've all experienced something like that in our lives. Um, and I think using that as a story device, or a theme for this series is a good idea. But yeah, overall, I dug it.
I was overall fairly positive about it. I think the one issue that I have with this is that you kind of knew what was going to happen, even though we make that one little change. And once Peggy Carter goes in, we kind of know really everything that's going to happen from that point forward, because nothing dramatically changed. They get on the train. We expect somebody, to possibly die,
Mm-hmm.
or come close to dying. So a lot of it felt like it was recycled from the movies, and I guess that's part of it, is like you just have put somebody else in that, we put Peggy Carter in Steve Rogers' shoes, and they're still going to go on the same missions and do the same things. So there wasn't a whole lot of surprise, I guess,
Yeah, I guess the
to
biggest
the
part is that
episode.
Steve Rogers becomes an Iron Man, and I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
that's really the biggest change
And
in
the
story.
Hydra Stomper, yeah.
Yeah, which I found that to be a little bit of a question mark. Is so just because all of these events happen now, Howard Stark has an idea for an Iron Man instead of Tony Stark having an idea for it, and it's like, well, how did he get the idea to create the exact same thing? But I mean, obviously, you got to have a little bit of fun with the story.
Oh yeah, and I think that was just them leaning into the whole, let's do something with Howard Stark, and I was okay with that. Apparently, the Hydra Stomper's been in a comic book
Oh,
someplace before, so at least I thought that I had read that. I didn't look it up, but so it's not a completely new idea. So I guess if you had read those books before, then it would be even less of a surprise.
mm-hmm.
So, but and then of course we had the change with, we'll just say it was Cthulhu, that shows up, there with the Tesseract.
Yes.
Um, but then we have the same. I guess we should have said spoilers at the start of this. We have the same where she sacrifices herself and ends up in modern day, you
Mm-hmm.
know, MCU. So, but I like Haley Atwell.
Yeah.
So
And
it's it.
is she
I'm
the
gonna go with
actress?
that.
Is she
Yes.
the actress in? Okay, I thought so.
Yeah. So
And
she did the
that's
live action
yeah.
character, and she
Okay.
did the voice here in the first episode of What If. So
And
yeah.
they got me twice on thinking, that somebody was dying. I thought Steve Rogers. I thought he died in that train explosion, and then when she got drawn into the other dimension, I thought, well, that's the end of her, and there's your poignant ending. And then I thought, well, whenever they showed her in the future, I'm like, well, yeah, no kidding. Why didn't I think of that? So I felt a little abashed by that. But one thing I did like is that, I mean, the voice acting is really good, and especially
Mm-hmm.
since I mean, you're using some of the same actors from live action, like
Yeah.
Sebastian Stan, um, Colonel Flynn. This is one of my favorite characters, or I'm not sorry, not characters, but character actors. Um, and now I can't think of his name, but he played Colonel Flynn, or he was the voice for Colonel Flynn in this story, and I knew his voice immediately. He's also been in The Handmaid's Tale, but yeah, this guy, I have to think of his, or I have to look up his name, but
Bradley
he
Whitford.
that's it, yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
So he's
IMDb.
there you go. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed maybe the realism of it with their likenesses being so similar is what made it good for me. Sometimes people don't like it to be too close to the real likeness, but in this case, I really did like it.
He was in the Cabin in the Woods, apparently.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't need to follow this rabbit hole though. So. I guess I didn't even realize that was Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. I mean, I guess it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that they credit, instead of just saying voice of Steve Rogers, it's the voice of skinny Steve Rogers. on IMDb. So that was kind of odd. So, yeah, and Jeremy Renner came back for that one line, and
Right.
and Samuel L. Jackson came back for his one line. So, yeah, and then Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher. So definitely had a lot of good voice actors. In this episode. Oh heck, the guy who voiced Arnim Zola was the actual actor as well. So lots of different, lots of irregulars reprising their characters for this. So
there were a few Easter eggs too in this. I don't know if you picked up on them.
Well, let's see.
The line that Bucky's line about Peggy almost ripping his arm off whenever she pulled him up from the side of the train. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you call that an Easter egg, but it was kind of funny.
Well, I think that's kind of like the reference to the regular universe.
Right.
That's just kind of the play on that. So yeah.
Sure. There you go.
Okay. What else?
And then Hedy Lamarr. Are you familiar with this person?
Vaguely. She was kind of like, what was it, like the It Girl or something? Am I thinking of the right person?
Well, she was a starlet from the the 30s, 40s, 50s. She was born in Austria, and she appeared in, oh my gosh, I can't remember. I think I watched a biography about her, but she was, to make her a little bit unique, she wasn't just a great actress, she was also an inventor and a film producer, and she did help the Americans or the Allies against the Axis powers. She helped invent like some sort of aircraft aerodynamics. And anyway, the reason it came up is because Howard Stark makes the comment in the show about how he dated Hedy Lamarr once. And I don't know what he said after that, but I'm like, oh, Hedy Lamarr. Well, then I remembered, okay, Howard Stark is sort of a knockoff of Howard Hughes.
Right.
And that's who Hedy Lamarr dated in real life at one time. Howard Hughes, the inventor, and the philanthropist and all that stuff. So this is all, I thought, and to be honest, Hedy Lamarr has been the inspiration for characters like Catwoman, and there's somebody else I can't remember, but anyway, kind of an interesting little side bit there. And she's a very, and I think they're going to be coming out with a movie about her soon. So just a little plug.
So, well, I really didn't have a whole lot else to say about this episode. With it being fairly brief, there's not necessarily a whole lot to say about it. So, I was kind of wanting that moment, like where, did in this MCU, in this multiverse, did Steve and Peggy get their dance? That was the big question mark for me for a lot of, a long time in the Marvel Cinematic, and then we finally got that answer in Endgame, which I think came later than when it should have been.
Spoilers.
But, yeah. I've already said spoilers once. So, but we did get the answer to that question here in this particular episode. So it's like, is it reversed and Steve is the one that's now suffering from Alzheimer's, and or did he die prior to to her coming back? So, but all right, well, we're gonna grade it. Do we want to grade the first episode?
One last minute comment, and I don't know if you guys, I'm a little bit older, and I played a game. My very first 3D first person shooter was Wolfenstein 3D, and this show reminded me so much of it, with all the Nazi soldiers and the castle in the mountains. Yeah,
yeah.
Yep. But it had Wolfenstein written all over it, even with the swastika flag banners that were hanging off the sides of the castle walls. I'm like, wow, I want to go. I'm got a hankering for this old 3D shooter. I'm gonna have to pull out. So
that's awesome.
All right, so now we're gonna grade it.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, so who wants to go first?
I'll go. I would put it at an 8.0, a very fine. I liked it a lot, but I'm curious to see where it's gonna go. Like I said, for me, the rewatchability just seemed like it wasn't quite there as maybe some of the other Marvel shows have been for me. So I'll see. I'm curious to see how it all ends up, if it ties together, or if it's just gonna kind of be a full-on anthology series. Because we could eventually, I guess, see a What If Avengers episode at the end of all this with all of them together. And that would be really cool. That would definitely affect my score.
Yeah, it's kind of like, is this going to end up being a whole bunch of one and dones, or is it going to have an underlying, you know, plot that's going to tie it, or thread that's going to tie it all together?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like
Yeah.
at a fine plus with this one, which really pains me to be that low with Haley Atwell in this. Um, because the Agent Carter TV series I enjoyed quite a bit, and I think it was just because of a lot of it was just because of the predictability about
Mhm.
what was going to happen in this episode, and they probably didn't want to take a whole lot of chances with the first episode,
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they'll take a few more risks in the storytelling in some of the subsequent episodes, and just like spoiler for the plot of the second one, it's like Black Panther or T'Challa becoming Star Lord, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
a
that's right.
big stretch. It's not quite as something that we could see having happened,
Yeah.
in First Avengers. So if they have that underlying thread that ties all together, that also probably could draw that rank up. But I'm probably like at a fine plus on this one.
Well, I'll see your fine plus, Scott, and raise you to a 7.0 fine / very fine.
Don't you hate Marvel, or not Marvel, just grading ratings? It's just terrible. Who was
It's
the
hard
idiot who
to.
came up with this idea? Oh wait.
I wouldn't go as high as an 8.0, a very fine. And if you want to go by the actual definitions, 8.0 is an attractive collectible with a moderate defect or an accumulation of small defects. And then the practically indiscernible difference between that and my grade of a 7.0 is an above average collectible with a major defect or an accumulation of small defects. Now, what words are different there?
Attractive.
Yeah, it's so slight.
Right.
And when you have like the 0.5 scale here, we're like a scale of 20. So someday
Yeah.
maybe we need to rethink our grading and just go with the even numbers.
The numbers, or maybe just switch back to the number scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 through 10.
1 through
But
10, which you can go look up what that is.
either way, I could watch this again. It's something you could play in the background. And it's easy on the eyes. I did like how Peggy got all beefed up and she looked, Wonder Woman, broad shoulders. Yeah, I liked the gender swap. Definitely. So a 7.0 might even be a little bit low, but ask me tomorrow, it might be different.
Yeah, and as you watch the first Avenger, it's like if there was any other individual that would have been worthy to take on the mantle of Captain America, it probably at that time would have been Peggy Carter. So,
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm just going to mention this because we're kind of talking about Captain America stuff, and I'm looking at an ad for Free Guy on the IMDb page, and there's actually, I won't say what it is, but there's actually a really, really great Captain America Avengers Steve Rogers Chris Evans moment in Free Guy. So I'll just leave that as a teaser out there for individuals. So
That's a good movie. I was pretty impressed. It was a good, like, not a real good thinker or anything, but it was just a good blockbuster movie.
Yeah, a good popcorn movie. Yeah. I think the and here we're going to start talking about Free Guy. To me, the one issue that movie's going to have is if you're not a gamer, and know a little bit about programming, there are a lot of jokes that are just going to go over people's heads in that.
That's true.
So like I went with my wife, and I found myself chuckling at moments where she just had no idea what the little in joke was with that. So so I guess at least they were okay with taking a few risks. However, I have Taika Waititi, whatever his name is, fatigue. I am so done with him. So, because we're now that we talked about Free Guy, he's in that, and we're going to talk about the Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah,
right? Which he's also in. So I am. I'm losing. Every time I see him popping up now, it's like, I just moan because it's just not. I'm glad he was in something that wasn't related to like a movie or a comic book universe that I feel invested in. So it wasn't as bad in Free Guy as what some of the things he's done in the comic book stuff is, but that's neither here nor there. So I'll stop bellyaching. Let's just move on. So the Suicide Squad. All right, so that's the joke. That's how we differentiate sequels now for DCs. We put the word "the" in front of them.
Right.
So because it could just be Suicide Squad 2. But I don't know.
Or
Who
you could
wants
even
to?
go Suicide Squad : and then some sort of subtitle to it. You could.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do what they did. That's very silly.
So who wants to give their first thoughts on it? I'll go first. So obviously a step up from the first
Yeah.
Suicide Squad. So DC obviously has wanted to make a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff, and they came much closer this time than they did with the first Suicide Squad movie. But they went so close as to get the director and about 50% of the actors from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies to come be in the Suicide Squad movie. So it was definitely a step up. It's still, it's upper mid level of the DC movies and not quite to the level of where a lot of the Marvel cinematic movies are at. But I will watch it again eventually. Whereas I still have not watched the first, just the adjective less. Well, no, that's not right.
Definitive
The
article
definitive
less.
article-less Suicide Squad. Thank you. I have not watched that a second time, and I've even watched Aquaman a second time. So there's my jab at Aquaman.
Just to look for new, to look for new flaws. That's the only reason.
I was going, this can't be as bad as I remembered it being, and it still was.
You had a bad day. That's all.
2 bad days. I had 2 bad days. Because it wasn't great both times. So it was decent. So all right, somebody else talk.
On my end, I also enjoyed it quite a bit. I have watched the the Suicide Squad multiple times. I do enjoy it. But
Really?
yeah, I do.
You're gonna have to explain why after you do your initial
Okay,
run here.
I will. But I liked that this was a bright movie. The DC movies have been so dark and so like they're just, the way they're shot is just dark, and this had a lot of bright colors and a lot of that, which I enjoyed that difference. And it's really hard not to, I noticed as I was writing notes, it's really hard not to compare this to the other Suicide Squad movie when you look at plot lines and characters and character development and where they all go. I thought overall the language and gore was overkill, but I know that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to make this like raunchy, R-rated, over the top with everything, comedy, action, whatever.
A little Deadpoolish.
Yeah, but it didn't land as well as Deadpool did. I don't think it felt excessive. But I like stuff like that, but it felt forced in that way. But I got past it, I guess. I loved that you didn't, you really, after about the first 15 minutes, you realized that anybody could die in this movie except for probably Harley Quinn and Bloodsport. Like those, you probably, spoilers, you probably knew that those two might make it through the end, but other than that, you kind of went, oh, they're kind of, the big names are going right away. Like there's people I did not see that happening. So I thought that was cool that they actually stuck true to that idea that anybody could go. Soundtrack was really good. Not as good as I really liked the soundtrack in the other Suicide Squad movie. There was a lot of original music in it, a lot of stuff written specifically for that. But this had good music choices that were a pleasant surprise, I guess, kind of in the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy had a really good soundtrack to it. You could definitely tell who was driving that ship, maybe, when it came to song choices on there. But overall, it was good. Rewatchable for sure.
And it's funny you mentioned the soundtrack, because that to me is what made the powers that be on the first Suicide Squad movie they just changed the movie to fit the trailer, or the reviews of the trailer, because everybody was hung up on, man, this sounds great, and they kind of inundated it with these.
They made up music videos instead.
Yeah, it was like a movie of music videos. I totally agree. It's hard to find anyone that won't agree that this is a step up from the first Suicide Squad movie. and all the schizophrenia that came from it. It wasn't as bad as the Justice League Whedon version, but it was still very obvious. I was torn over this. I mean, if I want to go back to how I felt watching, I was like, okay, there was a lot of bright colors and it was a lot of gore, and I was like, oh man, that is crazy, but okay, what do you expect with a team called the Suicide Squad? You know what they're all about. It's James Gunn. It really is James Gunn that's unleashed. He really did get complete creative control over this, which is, I think, good compared to what DC or Warner Brothers has done in the past. But is it still as endearing as what it could have been to me? Probably not. Mostly because I think I'm more of a fan of the stoic or the noble hero. But then again, this is a completely different type of team. So I think I learned pretty quickly to like it for what it was. And man, I don't know that I've seen a movie lately that had so many quotable quotes. I mean everything from Ratcatcher saying "I hope so" whenever Bloodsport said we're all gonna die, and Polka or not Ratcatcher, Polka, I hope so, and Bloodsport's like, oh, for there are lots of great quotes. Not everything does land, and I don't know if it's just the timing of it, but there was enough to like about this that puts this in the upper half of DC movies for me, just for different reasons than other movies. I mean, we know that some movies are they're good for different reasons or bad for different reasons. So I'm going to definitely watch. What I really wanted to do was watch the old one and the new one back to back, and I just didn't have time. So
yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about soundtrack, because that was definitely a step up. Now, you said to me, the problem with the soundtrack in the first one is that it was so forced, because like every time they go to the next character they're introducing of the Suicide Squad, and they start a different theme song, and that theme song is playing, and then they cut to another one, and it's just, let's cram in that music. Whereas in this one, it wasn't quite as forced as it was.
No, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. The way that it was laid out is much better. The soundtrack of the first one feels like they put out an album of songs inspired by the movie, kind of a thing, right? And so the soundtrack itself is good. Maybe it's very forced in the movie, whereas this feels like, okay, I know that song, I recognize, and it feels good within it. Like it's very well mixed within. For sure.
Yeah, and it didn't flow as well as they have in like the Guardians of the Galaxy films for me, but it was better in this one than it had been in the previous Suicide Squad films as well. I think it is crazy the number of actors that are in both the Suicide Squad and make an appearance in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Because it's absurd. So you have like
Michael Rooker.
Okay, Michael Rooker, who was in both. You have Sylvester Stallone. You have let's see, Sean Gunn. Was in.
He's in every James Gunn movie. Yeah.
James Gunn movie. Okay, I can't pronounce her name. Palm Clemente.
She's Mantis.
Mantis, and she was a dancer in the bar.
Right.
So she didn't have a major.
She was just like a little cameo. Like,
that's cool.
Like a cameo,
I didn't realize that
cameo thing. Let's see. Okay, I'm actually just going to a couple different websites, because I knew like this list was not complete.
They even got Patrick from SpongeBob to play Starro.
Oh,
did they really?
No.
I'll
get to that. I'll get to that point. That's kind of an inside joke before I even
okay.
guys in on it.
Nathan Fillion was in both. He had a small role in Guardians of the Galaxy. So you already said Michael Rooker, Sean Gunn. I'm going to the second list. And I think there are more. Steve Agee. Who was he? Okay, it's a small role. I can skip over those.
Now, who'd you say was in? Who was that last one you said it was in Guardians?
Steve Agee, or the one before that?
Nathan Fillion was.
Nathan Fillion.
Oh yeah.
So in the jail. In Guardians of the Galaxy, he was a voice of like the like when they're in the jail, like the big guy who comes up against them the very first time. So he was just like a voice actor in that. So, and there are, like I said, I just don't recognize who some of these other actors are, but there are several that are in both of those.
But most of them aren't. They're not like marquee actors. They're other than Michael Rooker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many other ones were.
Oh,
And
Sylvester
Sean Gunn, he's
Stallone,
known pretty well, but he
Sylvester
wasn't in a
Stallone,
recognizable role.
Sylvester Stallone was in
He was
Guardian.
okay, but he was a voice actor. I mean,
Okay.
and the words that he said were num num. I mean, or bird. I mean, if you didn't know already, there's no way you'd be able to say, "Oh my gosh, that's Sylvester Stallone."
I thought it sounded just like him.
Yeah, once you know, but you're not going to pick that out
for a while.
Oh,
One too
crazy.
close to the head, you know. It's like so.
That's a plus to this, though. The characters, I mean, digging deep on these obscure characters in DC villains especially, that's my jam. I love to see them go as deep as they did. I loved a lot of the actors too. Michael Rooker, now granted, his character in the Guardians, I forget the name of the guy with the little
Yondu.
Yeah, I think that's a great character. Savant, okay, in this movie, that long, greasy blonde hair does not match a 60-something-year-old man. It just looks weird.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we have said spoilers again, right?
Yes.
I mean, okay, so if you don't know already, Savant in the comics, his basic power is that he has this intelligence level that he's able to predict the outcome of any situation many steps ahead. In other words, you don't want to play chess against this guy. That's why you see him sitting in prison in that recreation yard throwing the tennis ball, the handball around. He's able to kill the bird by knowing exactly what the angles would be. So I think what some people might say was, well, he boogied out of there because he's a chicken, and but I think it's because he knew. He said, and of course you don't have to be a savant to actually know. He took off running back to the ocean, but he was the first victim. And anyway, I'm getting off track a bit. Oh, he wasn't. Who? Oh, yeah, the first one was Blackguard. Yeah,
Blackguard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, I think at watching it again, if you go in with the right mindset, knowing what you're getting into, I think there'd be a lot more laugh out loud moments, because Blackguard's like, hey guys, I'm here, because he ratted him out.
I'm the one who did it.
Yeah, that was good, and of course with masks and stuff, you don't know all these actors who they are and stuff. But who was your favorite character in this? I mean, who would you?
I really liked Dave DeSmulchin's Polka Dot Man. I thought that was a standout for me. I got really invested in him, especially as he survived quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I did not think he would be on Team 2, the team that survives.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I should have, but I didn't see it coming whenever he did end up dying. I mean, because he right away, he finally does something good, and he's got past his mommy issues, and he's like, I'm a superhero. And he just, it's.
I don't know. I don't know who my favorite would be. So
Harley
go
Quinn.
ahead. I'll think about it. No. I can definitely say it's not Harley Quinn. So
I'd say Idris Elba. You can't beat him in any. I mean, he's just going to make any role that he takes on really good. But John Cena, as douchey as he is, I'm sorry, is that a bad word? Okay. He's meant to be that way. It's meant to be a commentary on when you take the American ideal and twist it into something that you're saying is, saying that we're flawless. And and of course, anybody that watches this movie will see that message that he's putting out there. But God, this guy, and at the end, I was really kind of like, okay, get rid of this guy, because he's really getting on my nerves. But
well, we knew that wasn't going to happen because he's got an HBO Max series coming.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to ask you, because you have you know a lot more about this character historically in the comics than what I do. So was the Charlton version of the Peacemaker, even for the times, that close to this level of character? Because I do feel like when we were reading Vigilante and Peacemaker showed up in Vigilante, That's not far off the
No.
vigilante issues of
He's really
Peacemaker.
arrogant. And,
So that was pretty close. But I just don't. I've not really read any Charlton. So what we're talking 60s version was it to that extreme?
I only remember reading a couple of the issues, and all I can remember is that his dad was a Nazi. His real father was a Nazi, and he just takes the idea of peace to an extreme. And that's not that unfamiliar in heroism, because a lot of heroes will say, well, we have to have, and not just heroism, but I mean, you know uh, general, you look at United Nations peacekeeping missions, and they're strapped with arms. I mean, they'll use violence to keep the peace, but it's sort of it's a paradox. And this guy, but in the Charlton comics, he was just more of a this is in the 60s, and the Vietnam era, there was a lot of anti-war sentiment. And that's the most I can remember out of that, though. But now you're going to make me go back and read what I have. And
all right, I'll expect a report in an upcoming episode.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You'll have it on your desk Monday morning.
And they didn't do anything with the helmet having any ability, as because like in Vigilante, he thought it was talking to him.
Yeah.
And then of course it had that whole light flash thing that it could also do as well. They didn't do anything with that here in the Suicide Squad. So.
Right. And that was unique to, I think, the 80s version of the Peacekeeper. Okay. I mean, the accoutrements to his helmet, I have no idea what the origin of that helmet is, but it's one of the most unique outfits you'll ever see. But he's, I don't remember anything outside of Vigilante that said he had mental health issues, which it's obvious in this movie that they carried that over a bit.
Yeah. If I had to pick a favorite, I'm very tempted to pick Javelin, because he was so unexpected.
I know.
And he's like a Green Lantern, like random throwaway villain, if I remember correctly.
Because he's in a yellow outfit, he was made for a good Green Lantern because the weakness to yellow. Yeah.
And I do like how his javelin was used throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, that was like the one of the few good parts with Harley Quinn, with her. What do you want me to do with this? And it just ultimately just kind of plays a part in the big finale. I was expecting great things from Peter Capaldi, and his character was kind of a letdown. It's not Simon. It's I can't remember what his name, the name of the character that he played in this. The
Peter Capaldi.
He was a Doctor Who. So
yeah.
You mean the Thinker?
The Thinker. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the character that he played.
Yeah. He's a great actor.
This wasn't a great role for him. So
not really. I
know that John Ostrander was in this movie. I totally missed that. Okay,
he was the doctor the bad doctor that injected the explosive in the back of their heads.
That's terrific that he did that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to mention that myself. Dr. Fitzgibbon.
Yep.
And John Ostrander's, going back to the original, I don't know if you know Shad, but he was the writer of the 80s Suicide Squad. He got he was asked by DC to define or reinvent this team, who back in the 50s and 60s was just basically a military team, an espionage team led by Colonel Rick Flag. And he turned it into this villains at risk of getting their head blown off.
Yeah.
Or they get out of prison if they do it, take down these tasks. He's the one that gets the credit for that. But like so many comic creators, he's, it's not like these, they're work for hire. They don't have good benefits. And I know he had some health issues, and he's had to, have benefits to pay for certain surgeries. I can't remember what it was, but it's really a shame because this guy, he did a lot of stuff after that too. He did some Marvel and indie stuff. He did Martian Manhunter, The Spectre. Yeah, overall a really solid writer. And I was glad to see him get a role in this and maybe get some royalties out of this.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he can, because I don't know that he had any rights to these characters at all, or at least in the versions that they're portrayed here.
Well, Jim Starlin has stated that he gets more royalties from DC for what little involvement he had with their characters in movies than what he got from Thanos from the
Wow.
Marvel movies. So hopefully DC and Warner Brothers are doing right by some of these writers and
Yeah.
creators. It sounds like they're doing a better job than what Marvel is with regards to the creators.
Yeah.
So if we can take, what Jim Starlin said, and I'm trying to remember which characters it was that he said that about, but yeah, that was something that he's quoted as saying. So I do feel like a lot of the Team One were just people who said, "Ooh, I want to be in this movie," and they figured out, how can we get them in a scene? I know, we'll bring them all together and kill all of them. So
They scheduled a day and took care of it.
yeah, exactly. So got them all in there, and I just, I can't imagine that somebody would be super, it's like, oh, you might get to die in the first 15 minutes. That's what I want to do, make my impact on the DC universe. So, okay, Mike, I know you're dying to talk about Starro.
Oh my goodness, Starro he is considered a big bad in the DC universe. He's a boss level bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his portrayal here was done well. I thought that they were really true to form on the way he would send out all of his little mini Starros, that the face huggers, But I wish they would have made him more. He did look like, that's why I had the thought about, he looks like Patrick. He's more got the rounded appendages like Patrick from SpongeBob, and he's kind of like wobbles around. He's not really mobile. But the real Starro had like long tentacle like appendages, or rays they call them, and he could actually fly, and he was probably even bigger. And so I think, though, the way they did this one in was done well. And one of the quotes is that I think is fantastic, is it just makes you wonder if this isn't really the Starro. Maybe this is just a little mini Starro, and maybe the real one's out there somewhere for an actual big ticket movie.
For the Suicide Squad.
The Justice League, maybe something like that, because this is a Justice League villain. He first appeared in Brave and the Bold number 28.
Mm-hmm.
But back then I don't think he actually even had the facehugger thing going on. But anyway, I think that his his childlike mannerisms, whenever he would speak, it would be through the people he was controlling, and he would say things like, "This is my city," like he's a kid having a temper tantrum. Or he would say whenever he finally died, he said through one of the civilians, he said, "All I wanted to do I was happy just looking at the stars." Basically, he didn't really come here to do all this. He got captured, by the government at some point, and he's a sympathetic bad guy is what he is. So I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago, would we ever see Starro on the big screen, I'd be like, no way. They could never pull that one off. But I'm happy with the way this turned out, even with him looking like Patrick.
Well, this might ease people into him making a return in a little bit more serious way, because now it's like, okay, they've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's like, oh, you mean that wasn't the full extent of Starro. Now we're going to get a real taste of what Starro is capable of. And it might not be as hard of a pill to swallow in a follow-up.
Right. Or it could be Starro versus Mothra or Godzilla. King Kong.
Oh, don't go there. I really feel like they revved up the viciousness of Amanda Waller in this one.
In a way, but also she took a knock to the head with a golf club and didn't end up killing those people. I'm like, the old Amanda wouldn't have put up with that.
Yeah. But I mean, just like it was just like it felt a little extreme compared to some of her other portrayals. I mean, she wasn't that vicious in in
No.
Suicide Squad, you know.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like that.
Yeah, she seemed more aloof or cared less and would. Yeah, I think it was kind of a weird juxtaposition in that she was that way, but yet, whenever they rebelled against her, she didn't try to do anything except kind of put an ice pack on her head. I was a little confused about that.
Right.
I didn't think they'd killed Captain Boomerang either. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a mainstay character for the.
Was that the
Suicide
same
Squad.
actor as the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Jai Courtney.
Something. Courtney? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember just because again, I only saw Suicide Squad once.
You blocked it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about what we thought about Harley Quinn in this? We've all been kind of tiptoeing around Harley.
I know one thing about her.
What's that?
They took the tattoo off of her from the previous movies.
She got a renewal.
That said
a
rotten.
Oh.
Yeah, she had a removal.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Story-wise, I don't think they address it, but I read that it was because she didn't like it and James Gunn didn't like it. It was just they took that tattoo off her cheek that said rotten.
Leto's Joker lost a lot of tattoos in the new version of Justice League. So
True.
Maybe
the
they're
Snyder cut. Yeah.
Maybe they're not all real. Maybe they're all temp tattoos.
Just stick on
They're
them.
That's right.
Henna tattoos.
Well, yeah. When they do their makeup in the morning, when Harley Quinn's getting ready, sometimes she paints on the tattoo. Sometimes she doesn't.
feels rotten. Sometimes she doesn't.
Right. This time she didn't.
Yeah. Almond joys have nuts. Mounds don't.
That's
so,
right. I love
to your
I
question.
think the maybe the non-popular opinion, but I like the Harley Quinn character. And
I can't get over the voice. I know she's supposed to be from New Jersey, but the voice just grates on me, And I know that's probably, it's like whenever when you read a book with that character, you have your own voice for that character. And I've never even, it's like I also never read Wolverine with a Canadian accent, So, and I probably should, right, to be authentic.
Yeah.
But I know, Harley's from Jersey, so she should have that, probably something along that line of that stereotypical Jersey accent. And it's just, just a little too much for me.
I guess just growing up watching the animated series first, like that voice is fairly close, I would say, to the animated series. And so before I ever read Harley Quinn's voice, I heard Harley Quinn's voice, and it was just, that's what it was from the beginning for me. So I think that's why probably that doesn't bug me as much.
Maybe.
Whenever I hear her voice, the weirdest thing is that I think about Edith Bunker.
Yes, that's awesome.
She's a young.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And a young Edith Bunker. But it's not, it doesn't bother me. I think, well, maybe just looking at Margot Robbie is just like, well, I don't care if how she talks. She looks great. So, but
this is being recorded.
That's what she does. But there's probably they striking the balance of using her as a character and overusing her is the important thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
You think about Deadpool in the comics. I mean, okay, I dig his humor, but you can only take that in small doses, and that's the way you have to do Harley. Take it in small doses. You can't, just like you would Ambush Bug or all these self-aware, comedic type characters. But I think, she's a great actress. She knows what she's doing. Could they have done with a little bit less of her in this? That whole side story of her and the Central American prince or whatever. I mean, we could have done without that. But they had time on their hands, I guess, to do it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you that you have to, especially in an ensemble movie like this, you got to make sure everybody gets enough time, especially so it's believable that anybody could survive. And so the moment that you give Harley Quinn so much more screen time, you're like, well, she's not dying. Like,
Right,
and the
Well-
fact that you give like the polka dot man a lot of screen time made him like, oh, this guy might make it all the way through.
Yeah.
Because you kind of balance that ensemble cast, but she was a little off balance.
Yeah, you kind of know going in that, Harley's not dying, Bloodsport's not dying, Peacemaker's not dying, I mean, you kind of know that a lot of the other people, clearly are expendable. And like, I don't know, as you got to know Ratcatcher, right?
Yeah.
You felt like that she was gonna, make it. Did
They
she make
spent
it?
a lot of time.
She did.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that would have been dark if they'd have got rid of it.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
she
yeah.
was the one character that brought heart.
Yes.
She had the good relationship with her dad, and probably the only character in a comic book hero or comic bobook movie that actually uses the title 2 behind their name,
Yeah.
Ratcatcher 2. So that's something you see in like Hot Moo or Who's Who,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought her story was good. And I thought that was I didn't really get wrapped up until the very end where she was she was effective in her role.
Mm-hmm. In the second movie, in this movie and also in the other Suicide Squad movie, the Suicide Squid, they both feel like they have 2 movies going on. They have like a definitive kind of end of part 1, and then they go into part 2. And with this one, I felt like when they switched over to Harley's role, her thing with the prince was the beginning of part 2 of this movie, the Starro version. And that's really when you started to get a little bit more empathy and understanding and like Ratcatcher 2 as well. I thought was during part 2 of the movie.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of time talking about the Suicide Squad, and we've got 2 more topics left to cover before we wrap up this episode. So, what do you think? Anything else you really want to say about the Suicide Squad? We're going to give it these difficult grades.
Very specific grading.
Very specific grading. You don't have to give us the definition this time, Mike. Just so that you know, it's a.
Oh no, that's gonna be my thing now.
Oh.
No, I won't.
You can.
I'll go first.
Once.
I'll go
Okay.
first. I'm going to give this a fine plus 6.5. Even though I did enjoy it, there was just enough of it that I want more out of a comic book movie. This is different and good in certain ways, but I can't put the bar as high as I just can't. It's something I will bag and board. I will make sure it doesn't get tore up.
Nice. You will keep it in that acceptable. No, that's not acceptable condition. The
attractive.
Attractive. Yes, it's got some smaller defects, or a significant accumulation of small defects. So 6.5, fine plus for me, boys.
I'm gonna go 8.5, very fine plus.
Wow. Okay.
I immediately wanted to watch it again. I don't know. I guess I'm into trash movies.
I do too now after talking about it, but hey, we can't. These ratings they're as good as the they're just there.
We need to start a chart. We need to like keep a chart by our computers of like where we've rated things, so we can really kind of look and say, where should that actually be at?
Right. Because everything is relative in this world.
Exactly. So. I'm sorry, Shad, I cut you off.
That's okay. No, you're good. That's all I had to say about it.
Okay, I'm trying to think where I rated Black Widow.
Oh, okay.
I think I rated Black Widow a fine. So I am going fine plus also on this one because I think I liked it a little bit better than Black Widow, which, I didn't think that I would, but I think I liked it better than Black Widow. I liked them both. I didn't love either one of them, but I liked them both well enough. So I'm going to go with fine plus or a half a point higher than Black Widow, whatever I rated.
This is Black Widow plus 0.5.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's exactly my rating. So. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, we shall.
Let's talk about BRZRKR. The
Berserker.
vowels. The
Berserker.
vowels. BRZRKR. Right? Oh, where'd I have this at? So, all right. So, BRZRKR, number 1, courtesy of Boom Studios, written by Keanu Reeves. Okay. And Matt Kent. Okay. Definitely a good writer. Pencils by Ron Garney. Covers by Raphael Grandpa. I'm going to go with that name. So I'm just going to read the little intro here. The man known only as BRZRKR is half mortal and half god, cursed and compelled to violence, even at the sacrifice of his sanity. But after wandering the world for centuries, BRZRKR may have finally found a refuge, working for the U.S. government to fight the battles too violent, definitely, and too dangerous for anyone else. In exchange, BRZRKR will be granted the one thing he desires, the truth about his endless, blood-soaked existence and how to end it. So, that's a pretty accurate description of this first issue.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah. So, what is? I know, Mike, that you have some. I think you have some strong opinions on this issue, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. I mean, okay, first thoughts. I thought this is Vandal Savage. And I honestly, I didn't have that thought until the very last page when they say this guy's 80,000 years old.
80,000 years old, yeah.
And I thought, okay, this is dark hair. He's violent. He's just got the look. But that's okay.
So
I
you're
mean,
saying Vandal Savage looks like Keanu Reeves?
well, I'm not. I don't think this character looks like Keanu Reeves in the
Really?
book.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. No.
Wow. Okay. I think it's image.
But this must be the episode where we talk about excessive gore because yes,
That's exactly
that is.
what
Yeah. Okay. So I can take so much, but you can only. I don't know if the physics really allow for the punching through faces but really what really took the cake for me was when he punched into this guy's stomach, pulled out a rib, and then stabbed the other soldier with the rib.
I thought he stabbed the same guy with his own rib.
Oh, it was the same guy? Oh my lord.
Was it a different guy?
It was a different guy, I think, because there's no gaping hole in his gut here.
I thought it was the same guy. Hold on. Now I gotta go look.
Oh. And you know what? Maybe now that I'm looking, maybe it does look a little bit like Keanu. But then he rips the guy's arm off.
Yeah.
And then and beats him with his own arm. It's like, whoa, this is like Kill Bill level of violence. It's and I guess if that can be okay if you're ready for that. But I was like, whoa, okay. There's a lot of pages of this. So I don't think this is a bad story. It's only the first issue, but I will say if it continues every issue at the same level of nothing but blood and guts violence, I'll be like, okay, I'm tapping out.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll balance out a bit in the coming issues. This was it was an extra long issue. I don't know how many pages.
Was it
Probably
48,
around 40, 48.
Oh,
okay.
Really?
I think so.
Wow. Okay, it was a quick read then.
Well,
Of course,
there's not a lot of words.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically pages with just 2 or 3 panels mostly, but the artwork's great.
Yeah.
And I won't say it's a bad story because we're just looking into the
first issue. Yeah.
the first issue.
Lot,
Yeah. And
I'm trying to find the scene where he kills the guy with the rib. I'm trying to
pretty
find
early on in it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the ripped off arm. Let's see. Oh, I'd missed the part where he punched a guy and knocked his jaw off.
Oh yeah, knocked his jaw completely off.
I forgot that.
He also bit his own mom's boob.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, so here's the scene where he man, I can't tell. I can't tell if he's spinning and attacking the guy who's running up. The guy has a mustache. Does the guy he pulled a rib out of have a mustache? Okay, it's a different guy. It's 2 different guys. Yeah, you were right. 2 different guys.
Anyway, that's my. I mean, I'm in for. I tell you what, just because we tend to stick with stuff, I'll probably go at least. I don't know. How many issues is this supposed to be?
12.
I'll go
4
2
of
or
them
3
are
and
out.
see where it's going. Yeah.
You can get out to issue 4 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to, and I think they just recently announced 12.
Yeah,
don't
because I think
they
it was
ever
originally
said-
at 6, right, or something like that.
I don't know if they ever
6 or 8.
said.
Oh, okay.
Initially. I don't remember. It's
I
been so
don't either.
long since we saw the solicits for this. So, Chad, go ahead. Get your initial thoughts.
I liked it as a what if scenario. So what if a demigod worked for the government, kind of a thing. I thought that was, and kind of playing off of the fact that we just covered the first episode of What If. But I agree, a little more gory than it needed to be, a little bit just kind of out there. I wondered how much of this was a Keanu Reeves written story, or as much of like, hey, I've got an idea, and Matt does the writing to it, and that's kind of how it plays. That was just out of curiosity, not like it really matters on there, but it was definitely, I think there's gonna be something cool to the fact that he's got a little bit of selective memory, and memories are coming back potentially. That I'm hoping we see more in issue 2, because like Mike, I'm lacking in the story side, but there was enough here that issue 2 seemed enticing. Like, okay, well, I'll go to 2 and see what's up there. And if we still haven't gotten into the real what is the story about, then okay, I'm good. But it's good enough to pick up issue 2, I think.
This is 100% clearly written to be the pilot for a Keanu Reeves movie. I don't think anybody denies that. I don't think Keanu Reeves would even deny that the real reasoning behind this is a possible movie deal, and them to cover this. I mean, there's just no way that wouldn't be the case. So, this is going to be one of those blood and guts movies. So they're just kind of showing, what extreme ideas that they can pull from, here in the comics. Now, you got to talking about the excessive violence, and I hadn't really even thought about it too terribly much, but it just gave me a flashback to issue 100 of Walking Dead. And I remembered that was the issue where I said,
yeah, Walking
Dead jumped the shark for me. And this doesn't even, this is 10,000 feet over the shark as far as we were, if we're talking about jumping sharks for excessive violence. So, but I guess since that's almost, I feel like the point, that I guess I didn't really notice, or I thought I didn't notice it, but it just didn't bother me too terribly. Right. So, but yeah, the story here in this first issue is very, very thin, and I didn't realize it was as long as it was, because I read it twice in just a very, very short period of time, because there weren't a whole lot of word balloons in this one. It's a handful of thoughts and going from there. But I too am at least interested to pick up some subsequent issues, and kind of read what is going to happen inside of this series. So, yeah, and what the other part of it is funny is that there are memes online that talk about the fact that Keanu Reeves in real life, quote unquote, in real life, is an immortal, because people have found these really, really old photographs, and the person in the photograph looks like Keanu Reeves. And I wonder if there has to be some little bit of play on that idea that was incorporated into this comic. So that also kind of made me like this a little bit more. So I don't think it's trying to be something that it's not. It's not pretending that, I want to write a great comic.
Super serious.
It's I want to make a movie, and this is the movie that I want to make, and I want to star in. I don't. I have a feeling he would just say that flat out.
Sure.
So okay. So what do we want to? How much we want to talk about anything in this particular issue? Is that what we wanted to say? Just kind of give our thoughts, and we're gonna see what happens down the road. Anything else we want to talk about on this one? I do have one or two things I want to mention, but
there's only one thing I think what leads me to want to watch it or to read more is, I think the idea of a historical, his place in history and what's happened in the past, that seems more intriguing to me than the current day. So hopefully that last splash page will lead to more of that.
Yeah, the sessions with the therapist were actually probably the most interesting parts of this, and those are probably definitely Matt Kit Renton.
Yeah.
It's like Cal says here, I'll write the violent stuff and you write the thoughtful stuff. Yeah, I rip out this guy's rib and I stab another guy with it. I actually didn't notice the first time through. So there, when I read this, like his eyes are lit up like with energy, like early in the book.
Yeah, when he's jumping off of the
Yeah.
out of the helicopter or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I just didn't think about it because like later in the story, I don't remember that being so prevalent. It's just like I mean, like when he's going through all these fight scenes, there's
Mm-hmm.
sort of, but it's not as blue crackling energy looking. Um, and I do think it's odd that he can take, multiple bullet shots, and not leaving holes in his body, but then he gets his nose blown off. It's just like I think that is just in there deliberately to be gratuitous. It's kind of like the Deadpool movies. They're vulgar, deliberately vulgar as part of the joke. And I think this is just has the excessive violence just for the sake of having the excessive violence. I haven't watched any of the John Wick movies yet. I need to do that at some point, but it kind of feels like it's like another John Wick, and
That's
people
fair.
wants it to be wants it to be like a John Wick style series of films or something like that. So it's kind of about the fights and it's like, if you go watch a Jason Statham movie, you know what you're getting into,
Yeah.
right? I feel like that's what this is going to be. Um, so that was the only thing I had to say
Yeah.
about it. So
Agreed.
any last comments on it, Shad?
I don't think so. I think you guys covered everything that I was thinking as well.
All right. So do we want to grade the first issue or we want to hold judgment?
My first judgment's kind of low, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, then it can go up, you can, that's, though we're gonna hold off. Okay, so we're gonna withhold judgment for now. So okay, all right, that works for me. So okay, all right. So then we're gonna move into the last part here, Immortal Hulk. All right, I do have some. Let me find my notes here. Gotta get everything kind of in order. So this is volume 6 of Immortal Hulk, and so it's covering issues 26 through 30. Now, as I was doing my research, I actually did do a little research for this one. Um, I was looking up something on Comics Price Guide, and something for issue 25 caught my eye. And this is something that I definitely didn't say, and I didn't take issue 25 this way. But so when you read the little, I don't know, little blurb on Comics Price Guide, it says that Hulk Banner is possessed by the one below in this issue. So this is the issue that has that future version where he basically goes and destroys the entire universe, right? Yeah. And here it says he was possessed by the one below. And if that is the case in issue 25, I totally missed that. Is that something that you guys saw?
I definitely didn't pick up on that. This is where he was the destroyer of worlds kind of Hulk. Yeah, I definitely didn't get that vibe at all. It just seemed like that was the next phase of whatever Hulk was going to be at this kind of look to the future potentially.
I'll say that I did see that, but it's only because I read about that in like Marvel fandom.
Okay.
On their wiki or their fandom page, and that's what I gleaned. I mean, I wouldn't have probably gotten that of just reading the book, but yes, the reason he did everything he did was because he was possessed by the one below.
Okay, and I guess I don't remember them saying that in the issue.
No.
So I'm not for sure what the clue was that we were supposed to catch that would make us realize, I guess, other than the totally destructive nature of the Hulk. I kind of took it as, taking the Hulk to the ultimate extension of him just wanting to be left alone is where I took it to, not to he's been possessed and it's not actually Banner Hulk, but it's the one below that is actually possessing, Banner Hulk's body. So I don't know. That was just me. So okay, all right, enough of that. So issue 26 of Immortal Hulk. This is the synopsis from Marvel Unlimited. It says he's got an underground fortress. He has powerful allies. He's even got henchmen. He's got everything he needs to declare war on human society as we know it. He's the most dangerous man in the world, and Bruce Banner is just getting started. So here in issue 26, we basically have Banner kind of has this manifesto to the world, right? And he's basically decided that certain groups and individuals need to be punished for the harm that they are causing to the world. And he is going to turn Hulk into a targeted weapon to basically make those groups and individuals pay for what it is that they are doing to the world, society, whatever he just disagrees with. Now, Bruce does meet with Amadeus Cho, who is also a former Hulk, or a current Hulk, I guess. He has Amadeus Cho has pretty serious concerns about what Bruce is doing, but you kind of get the feeling that he ultimately trusts Bruce to make the right decision when all is said and done. That's kind of how they leave that. When you jump to the end of the issue, they're meeting in this diner, which and there's this cook right there. And at the end of the episode, we learned that the cook is actually Namor the Submariner, which the whole Defenders team that they had from the past. I guess he was there as backup in case Amadeus Cho decided to start something. I don't really know for sure what other purpose Namor was there for. So that was kind of neat though, just to bring Namor into this issue.
Right.
The interesting side effect of this manifesto is that it radicalizes a lot of individuals, especially young groups. They kind of form this Hulk teen brigade, or this Hulk smash kind of group. Back at Shadow Base, we learned that the Shadow Base is not only well financed, because of leftover government funds, but that nobody actually knows where they are, because anybody who would have known is either working with them or dead. And then Jackie McGee, who's at her paper having some discussions, and it comes up that she was actually part of the planning of this. I don't know. I was going to say insurgency, but that's not necessarily the best word to use in the current climate. So this whatever that happens at Shadow Base, and like the lawyers of the paper are like, we better be careful about saying that, because they'd be like, we're manufacturing, the news. And kind of what we get here at the end is that Bruce declares war on a particular entity. Now, they don't say what entity that is at the end of issue 26, but we know that we get this little kind of last couple of pages where we are, for some people, introduced to the Minotaur, who is the head of Roxxon. And he, at this point, he kind of prior to, when he's talking about revealing himself now, this was prior to War of the Realms, where he would take on a human guise. Now he is just always the Minotaur. So that's kind of where issue 26 wraps up. So what are your thoughts on issue 26?
I thought the Minotaur was and continues to be throughout this volume to be a really good nemesis and bad guy. It's somebody you can really root against.
Yeah. It's nice to have a clearly bad guy,
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I like seeing Namor. I don't know what I mean. I was hoping to see more of him, but guess that remains to be seen.
I really liked in this issue the conversation about the Hulk syndrome, and kind of as they're it's out in the public about what is the Hulk syndrome, a something that happens because you're exposed to gamma, or is it because you're exposed specifically to Bruce Banner's gamma because of his prior to his exposure, he had a personality, a dissociative identity disorder. And so the different theories was something I was really into in this issue they were talking about.
Now, from a Roxxon perspective, and this is Roxxon obviously takes its name from Exxon. Okay, so like whenever you look at things that are set in the Marvel universe, at gas stations, you'll often see them named Roxxon instead of like Exxon. Oh. So this is kind of, they used to be, Exxon was the big baddies because of, they had the oil spill and up in the Northeast many, many years ago. And it used to be that big oil was where all the money was, in the world. So we'll talk a little bit about how that's changed a little bit in one of these upcoming issues, right? But this was initially a group that made its money off of oil and oil. So, one of the recent when I did my reread through Captain America, there's one issue where Steve Rogers finds a closed Roxxon plant. It was like an old oil refinery that had been shut down, so that's just kind of where they get their money initially. So I don't know, what other thoughts on this issue?
I liked how the broadcast was kind of scattered throughout his viral video or whatever, however it comes out, but you get just a little bit of the message throughout the story. This page, I didn't catch it on first read. I almost just thought it was like a really like, did I miss something? Because it just sounds like it's him talking in the middle of a conversation that he's having with Amadeus Cho or whatever it may be. I'm like, that's just a different angle. It's kind of weird. And then I was like, oh no, I'm being silly. This is picking up on the broadcast throughout, and I liked how that was scattered throughout it.
We've talked before about, picked on Mike about reading comics panel by panel, but this is probably one of those books where you actually need to view it page by page, because I think it's easy to miss like those scenes where he's actually part of the broadcast, because you notice all those broadcast scenes, it's a full page, and most of the others have multiple panels per page. And if you're using the zoom in, if you're reading digital and using the zoom in, then you may just see, oh, it's just another panel, but it's actuality a full page. Right. And it's how we differentiate some of those things. So that's one of the things. I'll jump back to episode 109 where I did an interview with Douglas Paskovich, and he's really, really big on storytelling, and he's one of his big things is that there are things that you can do in comic that you can't do in other mediums like film and stuff like that. And this to me would be an example of one thing that you can do to tell a story is you make use of a full page to differentiate certain sections of story. So it's, when people talk about, liking to hold the comic in their hand, I think this is one of the reasons, because it's easy to miss that without that full panel, knowing what's going on. So, I didn't have any other notes on 26, so 27. Okay, I guess I should have advanced this a little bit. So 27. All right. This again is the Marvel Unlimited description. Some monsters are born from Gamma. Other monsters worship a different kind of green. Ha! In his war on the human world, the Immortal Hulk has taken the fight to its lord and masters, the Roxxon Corporation. And when you mess with the Minotaur, you get the horns. So issue 27, basically this issue takes place kind of in 3 views. So this is kind of another unique storytelling element. It kind of starts with the view from like Roxxon or from the Minotaur, the view from what's going on at Shadow Base, and then the view of some we'll just call them grunts for now at Roxxon. But what happens is, as the story progresses, they're kind of telling what they are doing at the time. That second and third view kind of combine into one view as the Hulk attacks that Roxxon base, which we learn is what houses the servers for Roxxon's social media presence. And under the current environment, that's where Roxxon is now actually making all of their money is in social media, not on, selling oil. So this obviously greatly distresses the Minotaur that, he kind of is thinking they're going to be able to survive any type of assault, on Roxxon. But whenever it comes down to, they're attacking our main social media servers, that's a big deal. And in fact, this attack brings down pretty much their entire social media presence. And you can kind of see that Al Ewing is taking aim at Facebook, right? Because like the website is Rock's face,
Yes.
But really, probably the big reveal in this issue is the last page, where we learn that the Hulk is not limited to only being out at night. And as long as Banner and Hulk are working together, then he is able to actually be out during the day and in the full sun. So, all right, go ahead.
Did you guys ever read any of the Anne Rice vampire novels?
No. I think I read the first one, but I don't remember anything about it.
Well, there's it was the first three were the main trilogy was the Interview with the Vampire, the Vampire Lestat, and the Queen of the Damned. And what the Hulk is doing on this final page is almost exactly what Lestat did. You know, obviously vampires can't be out in the sun, but he basically wanted to die, but at the same time he wanted to see how strong he could be. And basically the message was, whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. So that's what I see this as. And I know it's more of, you know, as long as he and Banner are on the same page, then they're going to survive. But it reminded me very much of that scene from a book I read 30 years ago called The Vampire Lestat.
Shad, you got
Yeah,
anything
this
else?
this was a crossover with the BRZRKR comic I've seen. They had the BRZRKR unit.
Oh, yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
Roxxon
It wasn't
BRZRKR
as
unit.
violent as BRZRKR was, so you know.
Oh no, it was the Roxxon BRZRKR unit, but it was all acronym.
And it had
Right.
vowels.
And it had the vowels. You're right.
had
It did
vowels.
have
It
vowels.
had the vowels, yes.
It had vowels. To avoid any copyright trademark infringement.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it appears that the Roxxon Corporation has their own mutants, or what exactly would you say that their guards, these 4 or 5 creatures they've got going on, they're not gamma creatures? It doesn't appear to be, I don't think, but
You know, they are. I thought they said earlier on that they were, you know, basically equivalent to the Hulk, but that was in like a previous, some of the previous issue. Although actually, no, that wasn't the Roxxon creatures. That was the ones from Shadow Base. So yeah, you're right. I hadn't really thought too much about it. I've kind of confused these guys with what we saw earlier from Shadow Base, and that's not actually the case.
yeah, they seem to be powered up, but didn't really explain how or why, except for I'm assuming it's an experiment that the Minotaur's done in order to get some guards that will evenly match the Hulk potentially.
I also wonder if they're from, you know, because if they're from like the same world as the Minotaur, so they're just more individuals that can shape change, that they're just monsters like the Minotaur that can shape change. I'll have to look into that because I really don't know.
But my favorite part was the end too, was just the together we can be stronger kind of. When she's like, you can't go out in the sun, there's daylight, and he's like, I'll stick it out.
Watch me.
Yes.
Watch me.
The storytelling kind of trope in there was really cool, of the 3 sets of panels throughout, and then when the battle got, I really enjoyed that. It was a nice kind of take on storytelling in there.
Yeah, I wonder if that's Al Ewing or if that's Joe Bennett or if that's them working together. But that is, again, that's something you can do with a comic book that you couldn't do in any other medium. You know, really. You know. All right. Anything else for issue 27? Good.
Not for me.
Okay. And I feel like these issues kind of snowball. You kind of do a little bit of setup in 26, and then it just kind of
builds
into
up
a bunch of big fight scenes, you know, in the subsequent issues. So issue 28, are your children normal? Are they respectful of you and other approved authority figures? Do they have a poster of the Punisher on their wall? Or are they angry and discourteous? Do they embrace difficult and or dangerous concepts such as protest and the environment? Do they stand with the Hulk? Ask yourself, are your children normal, or have they joined the Teen Brigade? I keep wanting to call this group Hulk Smash instead of the Teen Brigade.
I like that.
Because that's what they paint most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and wasn't Smash an animated series?
Animated.
Yeah, that was kind of his team.
Agents of Smash. Agents of Smash. Yep. Yep. So that was the main part of this episode, or I keep wanting to say episode. This issue is we have this security guard, and he's kind of this. Let's just call it like it is. He is this traditional, older, white male Bible Belt individual who has certain expectations of what family life is supposed to be. He was raised a certain way. He expects his kids to treat him with respect, like he treated his parents with respect. You can fill in the stereotype. the rest of the way through, right? So he has the wife who he says he loves. He's got a young child who is a social media child, and is obviously they have a very, very distant relationship. So that's established throughout the first half of this issue. The Minotaur is, of course, receiving reports about how the collapse of Roxxon's social media is affecting his finances, which, of course, does not make him happy. And he's actually kind of surprised that everybody is coming to love the Hulk, so it's just, kind of a surprise to him. So the Teen Brigade, while all this is happening because of the, Banner's War, we have this Teen Brigade that is mobilizing against Roxxon and other organizations as well. And this Teen Brigade happens to show up at Roxxon where this security guard works. So whenever he goes out, as the security guard has to confront this crowd, despite the fact that she is wearing a Hulk mask, he recognizes his daughter in the crowd. And he's having to make a decision. And he's basically, this security guard is having this self monologue through this issue where he's basically saying, I've got to do my job. That's not my daughter, not how she should be behaving. And he, in fact, fires on the crowd. So he pulls his weapon. I guess at some point he feels threatened, fires on the crowd. And this is the point where, fortunately, the Hulk steps in, right, and is able to protect the crowd from the bullets from the misguided security guard here. While all this is going on, the Minotaur is trying to figure out a way to basically monetize the Hulk. This was very, very clever to me. Roxxon basically prints the masks that the Teen Brigade is wearing, right? He says they basically are making like a 3,000% profit on each of those mask sales, which I thought was kind of clever. But the Minotaur basically wants more, so he makes a trip to a place called Monster Island, or is it Monster Isle? I can't remember. Monster something. Where he goes and talks to this monster called Zenmu. I don't think they actually say the name of the monster. I had to do a little research to get that monster's name. I'd recognized the character, but I couldn't remember exactly who that monster was. And we can talk a little bit more about Zenmu in an upcoming issue. So.
Yeah, because I don't know if they ever actually say his name in these, at least up into 30. I'm not sure, because I was still at the end of 30. I was like, what is this guy? Who is this guy?
Well, let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and talk about Zenmu, because then it'll make 30 make a little bit more sense. So Zenmu was introduced in Journey into Mystery issue number 62. So this character predates Thor by 21 issues.
Wow.
All right, so you're probably more than 2 years prior to the creation of Thor. So this character is back in the timely Atlas Monster days. Okay, so created by Jack Kirby. I couldn't verify this online, but it was my understanding that, and maybe it's just they just say this about all of the monster characters, but they are basically prototypes for the Incredible Hulk. So there are several monsters that are considered prototypes. So I think that's part of the reason why, the Minotaur says, I'm going to go get my own Hulk, right?
Yeah.
And this is the Hulk that he goes to get. Yeah. So now this is Zenmu's power set, according to marvel.fandom.com. Zenmu is capable of projecting hypnotic rays, which can penetrate most materials and be projected over great distances, large enough to encompass the Earth. Although the ray seems to be dependent on Zenmu's absorbed energy, these rays make exposed individuals obedient to his will and even makes them view Zenmu as wise and a benevolent leader. Contact with Zenmu's body can grant immunity from his hypnotic rays. Zenmu also seems to be able to command normally inanimate machinery as well. So, he has telekinetic powers, and then he is also, especially in these early monster ones, it's like it's Kirby playing around with space and television. He can like cast his hypnotic rays through TV. He can repair TVs and repair electronic devices and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's definitely a crazy Kirby concept, this character. So all right, so what else on 28? I kind of, they spent a lot of time on establishing the security guard's, distant relationship with his daughter, right? So,
Yeah, and it got dark a bit. I felt like he was so like didn't know what to do with his daughter to the point where it was almost easier for him to get his gun out with that crowd, to where he was like, well, I can't recognize her. What if something happened to her during this? And almost made it an easy decision. That was an interesting kind of dark road to take with that security guard character.
Yeah, I'm kind of rereading some of these Pandal. In my hand, the gun feels as warm as I mean, it's just like it's crazy, and he's clearly afraid and all at the exact same time. He even says, "I just feel threatened," and I like this when the Hulk makes his appearance. You don't see the Hulk show up. You're hearing it through the security guard's mind, and then there's a sound like a bomb dropping, and the ground shakes. Oh, you know what? I missed this. And the ground shakes so hard the gun goes off.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily say he pulled the trigger, but I mean, obviously his fingers on the trigger.
There, yeah.
So it was definitely a dicey situation. So
yeah.
I don't know what else here on this issue.
I like that the Minotaur becomes the head smasher in this issue. This is like when he just starts like that's my favorite part of that character is just like he doesn't like what you have to say. He's just a head smasher.
He just squeezes your head. Yeah, he starts off with cell phones and teacups and coffee cups, and then moves on to any of his minions. Yeah. If they don't say something that that he likes, he squashes their head.
Yeah. I'm squishing your head. I'm squishing your head. You would figure after 2 or 3, that they would stop wanting to be promoted. It
only gets worse from here.
Yeah. It keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. So, all right, 29. We ready for 29? All right. So, giant monsters have been unleashed in Phoenix, Arizona. Spoiler for the issue. The Roxxon Corporation is unavailable for comment because their social media presence is down. The people need help. They need the crusading outlaw with the heart of gold they read about in the Herald. They need their secret hero. Instead, they're getting the Immortal Hulk. All right. So, now we have this. The Hulk has established that he can be out in the day. And basically the Minotaur, now that he learns that, it's like, okay, how does that affect our plan? So there's apparently this plan that they have in the works to deal with the Hulk, and it's going to tie into Zenmu. Back at Shadow Base, Betty and Doc Samson are kind of having this conversation, just a typical conversation. But then as soon as Bruce pops back in, Betty switches back to being the Harpy. So anytime Bruce is around, she's the Harpy. Hulk's around, she's the Harpy.
Do we know if this is intentional? It feels intentional, right? Like she's doing it to scare him off, like to avoid conversation with him.
I think. Well, she's made it pretty clear because like there was that episode that issue where she was sitting Rick Jones was in the tub, and she was sitting in the rest bathroom with him. And she was normal.
Yes.
And then Bruce comes into the door. When the door opens, she's Harpy. And he's like, "Are you going to stay like this?" And her response is yes. So this is definitely deliberate on her part.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So back in Phoenix, Jackie is getting some pushback about her stories. So basically, they're kind of saying you need to take a little bit more time with them. There's some trouble coming from the board. I kind of read that to be maybe Roxxon is getting their fingers into the newspaper a little bit, but they don't say that. But that feels like something that would happen. It's like our board is a little nervous because it's like the equivalent of and now the English language is failing me all of a sudden. So I'll just move on. So then we have the kaiju attack against Phoenix, Arizona, right? I do love the names of the monsters that attack. So Harryhausen, that was like a guy who was big with, I think he did this, so again, English. Sinbad with the skeleton movies, the Seven Voyages of Sinbad.
Like the stop motion animation stuff.
Yeah, I think he was responsible for that. Now, one of them I don't know, O'Brien. One of the monsters is named O'Brien, not for
Yeah.
sure why. Obviously, Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Okay,
HP.
and
Ray
Bradbury.
Bradbury.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're both sci-fi and horror writers. The O'Brien, I just don't know, so I'm not sure
Right.
who that's supposed to be referencing. So they show up. The monsters have name. Back at Shadow Base, I think it's McGowan comes running in. Hey, we got to do something. Banner's like, that's what the Avengers are for. It's like, well, nobody else is around, so they
Guess
decide
what?
they're
They're
going to
not
go
around.
in. They're going to go in, and that's why this was done when it happened, because all the other heroes were off-world for something. I don't know if they said what they were off-world for. I can't remember exactly what event, because this would be post War of the Realms. I don't remember what was after War of the Realms. So he realizes that this is probably a trap. They go anyway. The team translocates there into Phoenix. The Hulk then gets literally dropped into the stomach of one of these monsters. And not only do you have the monster itself, but you have these little internal monsters that are inside of all these creatures as well. So, all right. So, what's everybody's thoughts on 29?
This was my favorite issue of the volume, just because of the kaiju, the big monsters, and the I mean, you can see the fear. I think this is just one of those issues where Bennett does a great job in making the reader feel the fear that the people have whenever these monsters are tearing through Phoenix.
Yeah, the big splash pages. The
Yeah.
one where Hulk's just getting ready to fall into the kaiju is just like those are just nice pieces of art in there. I think
Kind of reminds me of one of my favorite panels in comics is the DC New Frontier, where the losers, Johnny Cloud dives into the T-Rex's mouth with the grenades. You remember that panel, Scott, where he just jumps right in? He's the last of the losers left. They all died before him, but he just did a swan dive into this T-Rex's mouth.
I didn't really read any war comics, so I didn't read.
Oh, this was the DC New Frontier, though. This was Darwin Cook.
Okay, I don't remember. No, I do not remember that. But now I have to go back and reread.
Oh, look, try to find that page. It's early. It's early on, but it's worth it. It's one of my favorite panels in comics.
And O'Brien could be referring to an author named David Wright O'Brien, who was an American fantasy and science fiction writer. Died in 1944, so he was writer, I guess, around the same time. It was Bradbury was kind of active closer to that time, maybe.
No, Bradbury was. I think Bradbury died within my lifetime.
Okay, gotcha.
I would think that. I think Bradbury was still around in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I may be mistaken though. I probably should stop saying stuff that's recorded and not have any.
He was the only one that came up when I typed in O'Brien and like sci-fi or anything like that. So that could be it. I hadn't heard that name before though.
Did it say any of his books that he'd written?
A lot of it was short stories in like the Amazing Stories magazine or the Fantastic Adventure magazines. So he did a lot of writing in that type of work, a lot of pulp work.
Pulp, yeah. Okay. Oh, that makes sense. It's better answer than I had. Let's put it that. Let's put it.
It's a theory.
We can definitely say that. So, all right, what else from 29 has everybody got?
I think that's it on my end.
Mike, got anything else for 29?
No, I don't. Nope.
All right, so issue 30, last one for this volume. The first Gamma Bond unleashed a terrifying creature with impossible strength who waged war on all human authority. The authorities gave the beast a name that the whole world knows, but it was someone else's name first. And now the Hulk that has returned to take it back. So, all right, so that's a little bit further confirmation that this is, like, again, a prototype character for the Hulk. And I think and they're implying here, I don't remember this, that he was actually called the Hulk before the Hulk was referred to as the Hulk.
Yeah.
So in this issue, we kind of start off with Gamma Flight. We have poor Walter Langowski still frozen It's still on
Playing
ice,
cards on 'em.
hoping, yeah, hoping that he's gonna, make a return at some point. But then Gamma Flight kind of learns about the attack, on Phoenix. Now the bulk of this issue is just fight scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got Hulk fighting and Harpy fighting, and then Gamma Flight shows up, and they kind of team up with Samson, and they start fighting, and Titania's, tearing into monsters. But we do see that, inside of these monsters are lots and lots of little teeny tiny monsters, So the Hulk, who had in the previous issue, had dropped into the belly of one of these beasts, right? And I don't know if one monster's killed. I assume that this is the monster that the Hulk was in. Whatever the Hulk breaks free, so do all these internal creatures. So and I do have a note here that I feel like we get that Child Hulk, which is the big guy, right? Because he's been in so much pain that is the personality that comes out at this point. So that's kind of the one who really is probably the strongest of the Hulk. So whenever he escapes, that's whenever all these other creatures get released. So we have this situation where the Hulk smashing things just makes things worse. And so we kind of get to the end of this issue, arriving on the scene as the savior for Phoenix is Zenmu, who, because of his telekinetic powers, is able to individually start putting all of these smaller beasts into these bubbles to basically isolate them and prevent them from causing any additional harm and hurting people. And of course, we hear, in this issue that people are starting to blame this carnage on the Hulk. And since we know that part of Zenmu's, abilities include hypnosis and the ability to influence people, that is probably a little bit of Zenmu, and this is all Roxxon's plan to kind of turn public opinion against the Hulk and against, things that the Teen Brigade is doing. So, thoughts on 30?
I think one of the standout things I liked is just the back and forth banter between Puck and Crusher Creel, like throughout that, especially at the very beginning when they're just kind of complaining about they're supposed to be tracking the Hulk's activity, and they're like, now he's teleporting. How are we supposed to even keep up with this when he just like this and then when they actually come to the site and have their back and forths, and well, you decided to go with enemy number one instead of with us, and if I was America, and it was just like their kind of banter back and forth was a highlight for this issue outside of just the action that was packed in here.
Yep. Lots and lots of fighting.
The plot that Minotaur had to essentially have these big kaiju filled with little creatures, so that knowing that the Hulk is gonna bust it open at some point in time, and that people are gonna start blaming the Hulk for that. I thought that was a genius plot that just shows how the Minotaur can be a step ahead, and what I'm assuming Volume 7 will be. And what he's kind of putting together with Zenmu and their plan is going to be just so well thought out and going to be a good fight, I think, moving forward too.
Yeah. One thing, and I'm only mentioning this because, at some point, Mr. Fry is supposed to become important again. And we have seen Mr. Fry in his case multiple times in some of these issues, not in this issue, but in some of the other issues. So that's a character that's still hanging around in the background, Mike, you got anything to add here on issue 30?
No, not really. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, my lack of commentary doesn't mean I enjoyed it any less, but this is just another volume of great reading. It's not that common that you have a storyline that starts out at such a high level and then sustains it throughout, and this team has.
When I go back and I think about the first volume where it had like that House of Mystery, House of Secrets feel to it, and now we're kind of getting back into the traditional. A lot of people who read the Hulk because they wanted to see the Hulk smash stuff.
Yeah.
So now I feel like it's like Al Ewing is basically like, I want to give longtime Hulk fans what they're expecting out of a Hulk comic as well. I think he took, for sure this volume as that opportunity. Let's have the Hulk start smashing and breaking and lots of fights and doing all that stuff that people typically expect out of a Hulk book. Because he's had a lot of moments where it's not been a typical Hulk comic book. So
Right.
Well, it's good because it kind of resets the audience again too. Like we as the audience kind of go, oh, we're reading a normal Hulk book, and so whenever he's ready to kick it into horror or whatever element again, we've kind of cleansed our palate and we go, oh, didn't see that coming.
There you go. Yep. All right. So any final comments on issue 30?
No, not really.
Or the volume overall?
And I feel like overall, we get it seems to be the paces that really these stories come in 2-volume bulks. See the overall, we're kind of just at the halfway point of what this story arc is really going to entail, and so it kind of feels that way, especially at the ending when you just have that big splash page or that big page of Zenmu. Kind of showing up ready to take on this next battle. So it kind of feels like we're just at the halfway point of a pretty good story here.
Yeah, the hardcovers are actually in 10-issue blocks instead of 5-issue blocks. So like whenever we did the first volume, I had to ask Mike, it's like, okay, how many issues was I supposed to read for volume 1? Because I have mine booked like 10 issues and I wasn't for sure. So
yeah,
I definitely see that. So we've graded every single other volume.
Yes, we have.
Little Hulk. So I guess I feel like we're obligated to grade this one as well. So
your turn to go first, Scott.
I could go first. Okay, so I'm gonna do what am I gonna do for this one? I'm gonna go with very fine. Very fine. I'm gonna go with 8.0. Very fine. It's still something I absolutely would read again. I would absolutely recommend this to somebody else. I think I've read this volume 3 times now. Just from when I read it the first time, and now as part of our read through, I've read it 2 more times. And it does not disappoint me at all. I think some of I still really like the first volume, so and I don't think it's not to that level, but it's still outstanding. So I'm gonna go very fine plus. I'm going very fine plus. I decided I'm gonna throw on the plus. There we go. I did it. I committed.
I'm going very fine. 8.0. It's the same. I'm pretty sure I have not deviated more than half a point throughout the entire run. What really makes me a fan is the Minotaur as the antagonist, and and him not just being I almost said bullish, not just being a physical presence, but also a thinking type monster. He's a good bad guy, and that always makes for a good story if you get a good bad guy.
And the Minotaur and the Hulk have never been in the same room yet, and here they are.
True.
Matching wits.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I'll put it at a 9.0 at a very fine near mint. I think that's my baseline for these books has been so far as I haven't dipped below a 9.0. And I think this is a good baseline book. When I go below that, that's when we got to worry about that. But it doesn't have the horror element that I liked and showed up for originally. So that's why I think it hits that baseline of just a good solid story. Doesn't have maybe the additional flair that some of them have had that really has piqued my interest, but it's still good.
I just think there's so much in here, like Mike's already talked a lot about the whole Minotaur thing. I love these little scenes with Betty, where just the little things where she's Betty and then all of a sudden she's Harpy. When I just little teeny this homage to Kirby with Zenmu and the original Hulk, and I love that as well. These things are all just great little elements. So it's clear Al Ewing has done his homework in writing this story. So just super props to him. So and anybody who worked on that with him. So.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're done.
Yeah.
All right. Good
All right.
deal. So, all right. So, Mike, do you want to go first? Since you take the longest, it close.
Well, we'll spare the audience our discussion from prior to this podcast. But for now, go ahead. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Mike Atchison 5.
Shad.
You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook, mostly Facebook, and that's at Shad Schubert, SHAAD SCHUBERT. And I think the Can't Get Rights have a few shows coming out, so check out my band, The Can't Get Rights.
And Scott Reed, you can find me at burgcomics.com, BURGcomics.com, which has links to all my social media presence for the first comics. And then since we're a little September 4th, I have my hometown show in Harrisburg, Illinois, Berg Comics Con 2021. Kyle Starks is coming to that. Writer, best known as the writer and sometimes artist for Rick and Morty, but he has several other books, including Assassination and Old Head and The Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, which is one of his current books that's out now. So
I picked up issue 1 of that.
there you go. Okay,
I haven't read it yet, but
yeah, like I have not picked that one up yet, but I have Old Head on order. So
nice.
I'm planning on reading that one before the show as well. So
and you've got a TeePublic store out now.
Yeah, okay. So I got that will be on the website. It's just, people of all I struggle with, like, people say, "Oh, I want a t-shirt from the show." And it's like, well, if I print up like 20 or 30, I sell like 2. So I said, you know what? Why don't I just make a TeePublic store?
Yeah.
Dan Brown, who was a former host, he's got his real TeePublic store. So I thought I'll just throw up the designs and instead of just having my logo, I was like, why don't I put all the posters that I've had all these artists create for my show? So I've done those on there as well. I've even got some sketch variant covers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, teepublic.com/user/Berg Comics. So there as well. So thank you for that, Shad. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. I'd actually kind of forgotten about it.
My shirt just came in yesterday, so.
Oh, did you order one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I've sold a whopping 2 shirts.
I'm one of them.
Okay, way to go, Shad. Now you're gonna shame me into getting one. Now I'll have to look that up.
I got the sketch variant.
Yeah,
I do have a Berg Comics mask, but I think he gave that to me.
I've only sold 2 shirts. I sold 2 of that shirt. So,
yeah.
So somebody else bought that shirt as well. So that's okay. I mentioned episode 109, Douglas Paskovich. That's his design.
That's right.
That's the sketch variant for that. I thought it came out really well with with that on those. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop talking about that. So all right. So if you enjoyed this episode, please it'd be great if you left a positive 5-star review on the app of your choice, and of course share with your friends. And we will talk to you next time.
Good to go. Anybody need to clear their throat one last time? Me. Well, if you do, go ahead and clear your throat. Man, that is like a pet peeve listening to podcasts. If somebody is constantly clearing their throat, I'm like, because now that I say that, now it's like I need to clear my throat. I haven't used that, so I can do all I want. Yeah.